Welcome back to the R6 Masterclass. Today we're going to be doing every single site setup on Villa. Let's get straight into it. We're going to start off with Aviator, the one with the planes, surprisingly. Start off by reinforcing this wall. Once you've reinforced this wall, we're going to start off by getting real close with our shotgun. Now this is very important for this step, and opening up very thin head holes. Like so. And apparently the door as well. Once we have these very thin head holes, we then have the ability to peek out whilst providing a little bit more visual cover. Now for our next reinforcement, we're going to come all the way out across landing and reinforce this wall alone. Now if we have someone playing at 90, this wall is very important to actually have reinforced, and then we can open up some feet holes along here. So anyone playing in and around this area have sight lines to anyone trying to come through Wolf. And this is Wolf here. Now, if we come down 90, we have the option to either open or close the hatch. This is dependent on what people like. If you have a guy playing here, having this hatch open can be very important, especially also including, and not limited to, if you have Maestro and or bulletproof cameras on this window here. Then we want to reinforce the 90 wall. Okay, once that's done, we want to reinforce both of the pool walls. Now, some people like to leave one of these walls for feet holes. I personally don't, as having a player playing in this corner area on the other side of this wall is actually quite effective. And having someone being able to be tucked up and have more range of motion across the wall is actually quite useful. Now, where we will do a singular reinforcement is this wall and then the feet holes on the other side, as this space in 90 is something that shouldn't be given lightly. Now we want to reinforce both of these walls. Once that's done, we now need to put a rotation between the sites. Now, a crouch rotation on this wall is optimal. Now you can make it slightly wider by a plank or two, so then people in vault can peek the door. Now, this is also a personal preference thing. I personally prefer to have it tucked up nicely into the corner. That way people in the vault can quickly dip out without being seen by the door, but some people prefer this open wider. Now, for the last two reinforcements, I like to put them down in the middle of the site to allow something for other players to play off of. Now, you can only do one here if you would like. Maybe save a reinforcement for this. Maybe they breach this later on in the round and you want to place down the reinforcement on this wall. Or you can optimally remove both. I still recommend keeping one, as if it gets to a later round situation, you need to post up, have a bit of cover, play the rotation, wall bang a bit. It gives some meat in the middle of the site to play off of. Now, there is an optional extended hold for this site. Let's say we didn't have those two reinforcements in the middle, or we spared them from somewhere else. What we'd actually do is extend it out into statue. We'd reinforce both of these walls and then open the head holes like so, and play more extended on the top floor. And this is what you'll see a lot of in higher level gameplay, is the extension of sites across an entire floor, in a sense to try and get as much ground control, especially when you have, for example, these two walls reinforced, this open. You can really defend the master bedroom very easily. And what this allows you to do is hold ground for much longer before you then need to eventually fall back and play the site. Okay, now we're on to statue and trophy. The first thing we want to do is again reinforce the left hand side of this double wall and then open up feet holes, making anyone wanting to jump into this window a little bit more uneasy. Now we want to come straight onto the site and make the rotation into Astro. Crouch rotation, so it's nice and easy to move around. See how it's got these bottom bits? That can make it a little bit more difficult when someone is trying to get that like fluid motion through the rotation. Now, depending on how you like to play Astro, you can also open the hatch, and then you want to reinforce these two walls. Okay, once that's done, we actually want to open up some of this wall. Now, some people do a little bit, some people do a lot. It is kind of dependent on what you like. Now, obviously, you could use this to peek. And if you crouch through and hold the space bar, as we talked about in the tips and tricks for the auto vaults, you can pretty much vault onto the site. You could even have a castle here if you wanted. and just to do this kind of movement. And you can also do it across to the other side, but that's less important for this setup. Now we want to reinforce these two walls. Once that's done, we want to get close again, start opening up those head holes on the wall. This allows the master bedroom to be defended a little bit easier. Now, this is a personal preference thing. Having these head holes here can be beneficial or can have a massive negative impact as it cuts off a straight line of sight through the site, dividing two very key areas, the bomb site and Astro. Now, my personal preference for this is to open up this wall entirely. Some people like to put a reinforcement here and a leprechaun over there, but it's personal preference. This I find better to have opened up. The likelihood of you having a player successfully holding this area for a long enough period of time to warrant the reinforcements over here is very unlikely. Playing someone on Astro stairs, having them be able to look all the way through these feet holes, have a zombie barricade set up like over here in the middle of this painting, so it expands over the door, gives you a feet peek, maybe even throw down some barbed wire so it's even harder to see when you're on the edge of these stairs, throw down a barricade over here. It allows you to play more condensed on the site, whilst making this area over here very difficult to take. Another thing that we discussed in the tips and tricks video was the vault up here, allowing you to get up all the way up here to place down cameras. So make sure that you are aware of that. And players can also be stood up there, which is a very strong position if they are not droned correctly. And even when droning can be easily missed. Now, what do we do with the last 5 reinforcements? Well, we take something that we did with the Aviator hold and we do it again. We reinforce this wall and then we open up the head holes. Nice and close. Make sure that you're pretty much licking the wall at this point. Then we want to go and reinforce the 90 wall and have a rotation over here. Now, so this is something that a player can do by themselves, especially if they have a shotgun at the start of the round. They can come out to this side and do this entire setup by themselves. It's 5 reinforcements. The 3 reinforcements that are important to get down are the ones facing the study. And then they can do, for example, the study wall, then the head holes, then these 2 walls, then this wall, then the feet holes, and then the 90 wall and the rotation, and then play in this area. You can actually have 2 players in this area. And then you can hold this for a lot longer, but you don't have this wall reinforced, so them taking 90 is quite a large possibility. Now, you can move this wall and place it here, and then open this up, but it is then very exposed to the window. It doesn't give you that free movement in and around the vault area, allowing you to play onto the study door if needed. But this is another one of those techniques of extending a site so much that it actually helps impact the amount of time that it takes to take control of this. If they're playing top floor, i.e. statue, they need study control, they need 90 control, they need control of this half of the map, they need bedroom control, and then they can maybe have a guy pushing up solo Astro. If they invest 2 players here, 2 players on the master bedroom and balcony area, and 1 player on Astro, and you have 2 players here, and 1 in each site, and potentially 1 on the Astro stairs that's doing a light lurk roam, and then potentially one of the guys over here can then rotate around to get to different areas. It makes it very hard for the enemies to gain that map control that they so need. Alright, now we're on to kitchen. Make sure that you always shoot this stupid jukebox, as it makes a lot of noise. We're going to start off by reinforcing this wall, and then we're going to open up feet holes to make anyone trying to push into the laundry room a little bit more uncomfortable. That was a misclick. Then we're actually going to reinforce this wall. Now, this is a little bit more of a strange take on this site, but bear with me. I'm going to open up this wall, and this is something, and one of the few sites in the game where you actually may want to bring a castle. Castle this door, providing a little bit more bulletproof cover across the sites. Then we reinforce just this wall and open a rotation as close to the right-hand side corner as possible. Now, if you are going to be playing in and around this area, these 4 chairs here are wanted to get rid of. Just bash out the backs of the legs. You can shoot this, but I'm trying to save the shotgun shells at the moment. And if you bash out the frames on the bottom, you can destroy the chairs quicker. This allows you to get nice and tucked up into this corner and then play really, really tight on this if you need to, and then swing out onto this door. But again, this is not the most optimal cover point to utilize. Now we want to reinforce both of these walls. Once that's done, another thing that you may want here is a frost. So you can bring a deployable shield and some frost mats, double mat on either side of this window, and a deployable shield placed really up against this door. And then you can actually open up the bottom half of this wall, so you can sneak out this way if you need to. And it also makes that window a little bit more vulnerable to anyone playing in this area. Again, you can open it up more or less, but you are going to want to have someone playing in and around the basement, allowing them to also fight that window. Speaking of the basement, what we want to do here is castle off this door. Now, you can leave that door open if you really wanted to. You don't need to castle these, but typically there's only going to be one player down here in this area, and you also want to castle off this door, allowing this section to be isolated. The entry points then are this barrel that they can come and breach, which is just outside of bicycle window. That took me a minute to think there. And we want to also reinforce this wall, allowing someone to play very bunked up on these stairs. Electrifying this wall can also be a big benefit. Opening up this hatch is a benefit. It stops players from wanting to jump in on this window. And again, you can just throw a frost mat down here. There's 3 frost mats used very effectively. And you can even have like frost play down here if you really wanted. And then you want to reinforce the pantry stairs. Now, we have 3 reinforcements left, and how we choose to utilize them is then very dependent on the rest of the site setup. Now, dependent on how you're doing this, you want this wall reinforced. So that leaves us with 2. Now, you can go and reinforce the Astro hatch and stop them from opening up this. You can do this wall a couple of ways. You can put a reinforcement in the middle, open up holes either side, or reinforce either side and open up a hole in the middle. Now, if you want to reinforce the hatch in master bedroom that drops into the laundry room, which is a non-essential hatch as it really doesn't provide much for the attackers, if they do get it open or they have to hard breach it, it's not like it's crazy powerful for the site and it's something that you want to defend. I would recommend placing the reinforcements on the left and right side, and then open up the middle of the wall, giving some optional peeking in the site, allowing someone to play in multiple places. For example, the way back here can help defend in through this point. Now, for the final castle, you actually want to place it on bicycle window. That'll use your 4 castles very, very effectively. And we're not quite done. Another thing that we can do to take this a step further is open up most of this wall, allowing us to play off of this door frame, also have cover, and then play out into the hallway and create some unique lines to mess around with and allow people to assist anyone that's potentially coming down the Astro stairs or up from the basement. And your basement player can come up from the basement, swing out here, and fight people that are on this door trying to gain access to the site. Living room and library, one of the most annoying sites in the game. Unfortunately, this is a very difficult site to defend. Well, it requires deployable shields, again, castle. And this map actually has 2 sites where castle is a very viable operator to bring. This is like one of the very few maps that actually requires a castle in a setup to do it well. We're going to start off by coming over here, reinforcing this singular wall. Once that's done, we're going to open up feet holes across this wall and open up the hatch. And then we want to reinforce this triple wall. Once that's done, we're going to come over to the vault. We're going to reinforce this singular wall. And then once that's done, we're going to open up feet holes into the bathroom. Now, some people will reinforce one side, leave the other side open. I personally don't like this, as it will give potential opportunities for cover on either side, and having just feet holes opened up on this will make them less likely to want to enter the bathroom altogether. Now, you can throw ADSs down in the bathroom to limit the amount of destruction that they can potentially do to this wall outside of buck. Now, this is going to be a very controversial thing as to what we do with this wall, but we need to know where our castles are going to go. We're going to place one castle here. And then we're going to place one castle over here. Are you still with me? Alright, we're going to want a deployable shield in this doorway, but set back enough that we can place ADSs over here on the wall or into this corner to then defend the deployable shield. We want at least 2 ADSs here. We don't want to reinforce both of these walls. And then we want to reinforce this singular wall here. Now this is where it gets interesting. We could also potentially play another deployable shield out here in the corridor. We also want a vaultable rotation into the vault. Make sure I can actually jump through this as small as possible. Now we can place it on the other side, but due to the way that we have the site set up, we can actually have someone playing in this corner, checking for jump-ins, and then being somewhat bunkered in a sense from anyone that could have gotten access to this hallway. This will be the last reinforcement that we placed. We want to leave a reinforcement if we lose control of this area just to bunker off this vault wall. Now, speaking of this area, we want to open up this entire wall. We don't want them to be able to just come in here and freely plant. Now, this can lead to big problems and make your life very difficult or make your life very easy. Now, we could reinforce one of the sides, but then it would give them a place to go and plant nice and bunkered up in the corner, and we don't want that. We actually also want head holes across this wall and then open it up so we can then vault over, allowing us to peek out to the main door of sight. We also have some cover from the castle, and the same for here. Now, there is multiple entry points, and castling this door may not be effective. And you can play around with where you place this castle. But for the other castles that you can place down to maneuver around certain lines of sight, is you can castle off this door. You can also castle off the bicycle door, pinning in this area if you wanted. And you can castle off this door. This hatch, they're going to get it if they really want it, so it's kind of pointless to reinforce it. And for the last bit of openings, we want to have some head holes that also translate into a vaultable rotation. If the last pieces of debris want to move. And this will give you one of the more effective library holds. Now, to do this, you want castle, a deployable shield, preferably from Frost, as you want to use those mats on windows and jump-ins and potentially the mats to help hold this area over here is where you want the deployable in case they try to jump into this area and make it a little bit more time-consuming. We also want a Jaeger and a Wamai, and then we want some sort of anti-breach, like a Mute or even a Kaid. Bandit can also work, but Mute's probably going to work a little bit better. Get some drone denial and a C4, as a lot of the floors in here are soft, and it will help with vertical plays. Thank you for watching this Rainbow Six Siege Masterclass. As always, links are in the description to Fiverr, where I offer one-on-one coaching. Without further ado, I'll see you in the next one. Bye-bye.